Hi and hello, and today's lesson is on raster versus vector in terms of line art. Raster is the default for many art programs. Unless it's a art program specifically for a vector, it will usually default to raster. And the thing about raster layers is that when you draw and say that you transform it to be bigger, then it will be very blurry. So it's generally safer to shrink raster layer images instead of blowing them up to make them bigger. In contrast to that, there is a thing called the vector layer. And now, what is vector? Vector is basically all of the pixels have a specific weight, and they will always be the same no matter what. You can shrink them, and you can expand them, and they will always look marginally about the same. It will not get blurry. It will look as sharp as the first time you drew the line. Now, in a previous lesson, line art, I showed one of the many ways you can draw line art, where instead of going back and forth, erasing and cleaning up the line, you can use multiple layers. Well, vector has a thing called the vector eraser, and that is essentially the same thing, except it's faster and it can be on the same layer or on multiple layers. Vector is usually preferred for logos. A few forms of animation use vector, say flash animation, and posters. Because say that you want to make your image larger for a poster, you still want your lines to be clean and sharp. Therefore, if you make your whole entire artwork and you need to change it to a different dimension size, canvas size, poster size, you can. You can with not so much difficulty in comparison to if you were using a raster layer, where you had a raster layer for your line art, where blowing it up to a larger size to fit your canvas or poster needs is a bit more trickier and would usually end up with your line art looking more soft and blurry instead of crisp and sharp. Now, the vector layer isn't perfect. It's usually just for line art. You cannot use the bucket tool. And a vector layer can be merged into a raster layer, but a raster layer can never become a vector layer. The moment a vector layer becomes a raster layer, it loses the pixel weight, and in turn it cannot regain the pixel weight that it had lost the moment it turned into a raster layer. And when it's a raster layer, the same issue apply of you can shrink it, make it bigger, and it's blurry again. I think that just about covers the very basics of a raster and vector layer. Oh, have a nice day.